Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. It's Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Line, which was broadcast a day or so ago, and I'm going to be commenting on the calls that came in, how Matt dealt with them, and what I think of some of the arguments that were put across. So just one or two things before that. So on my last video, I think I'm going to make this a regular feature. Obviously, people leave comments on my videos, and I'm going to be picking out one or two of the comments that I found particularly amusing and responding to them here. So on my last video, there were two comments which I found quite amusing. One was that somebody said, you don't have the courage to debate Matt Dillahunty. Hands up. I admit it. I do not have the courage to debate Matt Dillahunty. I think he would make mincemeat of me. And so, yes, why I would want to debate Matt, I don't know, because obviously we're both atheists, and where we do disagree on certain issues, I probably wouldn't be too interested in debating him. But yes, you're absolutely right. I'd be terrified to debate Matt. I think that I think he's a real beast when it comes to debating, and I think anybody should be lacking courage at debating Matt. So yeah, I agree with you there. Um, And then another very bizarre comment. Somebody said, I don't know whether it was referring to me or somebody else, but somebody said, um, you're disingenuous. You're a fake." I think implying that, I don't know, I'm a fake atheist or something like that. I think somebody left a follow up comment and said, "Well, how so?" And he's not replied. So I'm not too sure what he meant by that. But am I a fake atheist? Am I really maybe a Christian just pretending to be an atheist and doing such a horribly bad job at it that I want to give atheists a bad name? Oh, you see that Stuart, that atheist? He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's pathetic. Christianity is the way to go. Well, maybe judge for yourself. I'm a very dedicated fake atheist. That's what I am. I've made probably 60, 70, 80 videos, all with atheist content. So I'd be a very dedicated fake atheist. So sorry to disappoint you. I'm not a fake atheist. Um, I'm a genuine atheist for my sins. Okay, so just coming back to Matt Dillahunty. So a couple of things I've noticed. I'll just say very briefly is that on his own channel, he is reviewing his own debates. And he's reviewed two debates recently, actually, which I covered in my last video. One was his debate with Adherent Apologetics, or I can't remember what the guy's, it was Zach. Zach, I can't remember his surname. But he proposed that a perfect mind created the universe. And so Matt has he's actually done his own video. He's actually reviewed that debate, which in a way is, to me, it's a little bit bizarre because, as I said in my comments on the video, I thought that maybe, I mean, he was debating somebody at in my opinion, such a low level of apologetics that it was hardly worth doing. But anyway, he's done that. He's also done the video that he did on the proposition all gambling should be illegal. So he's reviewing his own debates, which he's doing online. So fair enough. Just mention that. But let's go on now to the callers. So we had a few technical problems, not least because, and this has really irritated me with atheist experience over the years, that people will call up and they'll be told to turn off their stream, turn off YouTube, uh, put the volume control on zero, and then they won't do it. So when the call comes through, you've got a 7 second delay echoing in the background. And that's been going on for years. And, it slows the program down. It really irritates the hell out of me. It really does. And if they hear that happening, in my opinion, they should just put them back in the queue and then just go on to the next person. And then when the call screener when they say to the call screener, "Oh, why do you put me back in the queue?" Say, "Yeah, because you didn't turn off your stream like we told you to." So it irritates the hell out of me, that does. So moving on, yeah. So there were some issues. I think somebody by the name of Mackenzie called in, and he had his stream up. So Matt had asked him several times, and then he had to go back to the back of the queue, and then Ron came on, and again with Ron it was like, "Hello, welcome to Matt, welcome to the line. What have you got for us?" Silence. Silence. Nothing. Silence. Hello? Hello? You're on the air. What have you got for us? Hello? Silence. So, 5 seconds of silence. Can you believe it? Hello? Have you got anything to say? Have you actually called with a point? You're on the air. Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. I can't believe that people are phoning in. And it's quite a big thing to phone in. I mean, I've never done it, but if I did do it, I would make sure that, with the world listening, I would be prepared. Anyway, never mind about that. Let's come back to Ron. So, Ron was calling about, let me see. Oh, yes. He's calling about the Bible, and he's saying that, well, he's saying that there are four main points to freedom, and these can all be found in the Bible. So Matt says, "Okay, what are they?" But Matt said, "I don't necessarily think there are four." But anyway, go on. What are the four you've got? And he said, freedom of speech, freedom from slavery, freedom of gender equality, and freedom of religion. And his proposition, he was saying that these can all be found in the Bible. And Matt said, "Well, I agree with you that those are four very important points on like a freedom of rights charter, and they can all be found in the UN Freedom of Rights Charter." But he said the Bible is against every single one of them. It's against freedom of speech. It's pro-slavery. It's not in favor of gender equality, and it's not in favor of freedom of religion. And he's absolutely right on all points. Of course, I don't want to go through why, because obviously it's fairly obvious. But Ron did say, well, Matt challenged him and said, "Where does it say in the Bible that it's against slavery?" And amazingly, Ron said, "Well, it does say that." And he went straight to Exodus verse 21, the very verse that condoned slavery. And Matt was baffled by this. And Ron started reading it out, and Matt pointed out, "Well, what are you talking about?" Because it actually gives instructions on how to dictating what you can do with your slaves and what you can't do with your slaves. It's actually laying down rules on how to treat slaves, how much you can beat them, and whether you can keep them depending on whether they die within a day of being beaten. And in no way does it condone slavery. It actually supports slavery. Sorry, yeah, it does condone slavery. It doesn't condemn slavery. And Ron started saying, "Well, it depends on how you interpret it." And then Matt just said, "No, sir, no, that is dishonest." And then he accused him of being a prank caller. And so effectively that was it. He just more or less closed the call down and just moved on, because obviously I don't think it was a prank caller. I just think that, the caller was just incredibly wrong. And so, okay, let's move on. That was a good call. I did enjoy that. So I know I've been critical of the quality of recent calls, but I thought that was interesting and hilarious. And I don't think it was a prank caller at all. And it just goes back to this thing that no matter what you say about the Bible, apologists will always say, "Well, you need to study hermeneutics. You need to interpret it in a particular way, and then you'll see what it's really saying. That actually it's condemning slavery. So no, 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 no. If you're going to start saying that, then you can excuse any atrocities which are in the Bible or any other religious book. You could take Mein Kampf and say, well, let's apply hermeneutics to Mein Kampf, and actually find out that Hitler actually had quite a good vision for the world. No, 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 that's nonsense. So let's move on. So the next caller was Rini from Florida, calling about, why is it bad to be Christian phobic or Islamophobic? So Matt pointed out that phobia does not necessarily mean fear. It means aversion to. It means you're in opposition to something. So if you're Islamophobic, if you're an Islamophobe, then you've got an aversion to Muslims, effectively, which of course is bigotry. So he didn't really spend too much time on that call because it was it was a no-brainer really. So he corrected Rennie fairly easily, and then he moved on. And then he came to a really bizarre call. Somebody by the name of Carl. Yeah, Carl was calling in, effectively claiming that social media is toxic. Now his argument seemed to be that it's better because it's better to interact with people in real life, in the flesh, one to one, and because social media is toxic, then we should effectively shun social media and only meet people in real life, because effectively online interactions are no good for anybody at all. So Matt's view on this was that social media can be a very good thing. Social interactions, online interactions can be very good. That doesn't mean to say that there are not bad things about social media and interactions online, but that we shouldn't stick our head in the sand, that we've got this new technology and it's very beneficial for a lot of people, and that because there are transgressions and unpleasant things that happen in online, that it doesn't make any sense to kind of claim the high ground and say that you're better because you meet people in person and you don't waste time in a toxic environment like Twitter, Facebook, etc. So he seemed to go on a bit from that, and he revealed a bit more about himself, which I thought was quite telling, really. And Matt said, "Well, why have you got this view? Why have you got this? Why have you got such a kind of prejudicial view against online content and platforms?" And he said that, well, he started off saying something really weird. He mentioned incels, and then he said, "Look, Matt," he said, "I'm 65 years old. I'm not an attractive guy, and I've been on to the online platforms, dating apps, where it's 10 guys to one woman, and effectively nobody will pay any attention to me because I look fairly average and ordinary. But when I've been along to clubs, I've been to cycling clubs, and he mentioned he did a triathlon. Yeah, he's training in a triathlon. He's in a triathlon club." And Matt says, "Okay, well, what do you do when you're out running? I mean, you don't have. I mean, how do you manage to talk to each other?" He said, "Oh, we do actually when we're out jogging and training. We have conversations, etc. And people are interested in me because, I'm an accountant. I don't look. I'm not a completely handsome guy, but they can see that I'm a nice guy with good values and everything, and a sense of humor, and I've got friends, and etc. Whereas online, it's all about looks, and nobody's really interested in me." And that kind of shed some new light on it, because as somebody in the comments was saying, that Carl was using the language that a lot of incels use. And I think when Matt eventually hung up on him, he then he expanded a bit and started saying that about incels. I think he called them, I've written it down here somewhere, well, basically whiny little bitches who think that they're entitled to have sex at anybody's expense, which actually probably sums it up fairly well. And he then went on to say that um, that we don't live in a world where everybody will get the friendships and the relationships that they want, and that even if you work at it, and this is true, of course it's true, even if you work at it and even if you deserve it, you won't necessarily get the relationships and the friendships that you want, and that's just tough. Life sucks. But um, he was accusing Ron of ageism, because Ron was talking about the younger generation, the millennials, and they just sit at home all day looking at their mobile phones and interacting electronically rather than being out and meeting people, and it smacks of ageism. And well, I agree with Matt there. And we hear a lot of this from, well, actually from my generation, saying, "Oh, when we were such and such an age, we had nothing, but we had everything. We weren't. We would go out in the morning and we would get fresh air in our lungs. We would exercise, play football, and and nowadays everybody just sits at home and they message each other on Facebook and play video games. Well, I mean, that's like a kind of meme. I've seen memes going around the internet, and so I think that probably it sounded to me like Carl was in that camp, and he was effectively rubbishing the fact that people are online getting, effectively replacing what he thinks is replacing real world interactions with virtual interactions. But of course, you can do both. And, I mean, I spend a lot of time interacting online, but, obviously, I've also got people that I see and communicate with. But I must say that I do value a lot the internet. It when I was self-employed in the 90s and I worked from home, I would say my life is probably better now. It's better now because of the internet than it was then, because in those days, I mean, it's nice to get up in the morning and see messages from some of my friends on the internet. It gives me, it's good to connect with people like that. And back in the 90s and the 80s, when I was a lot younger, self-employed and also living alone, it was a bit more kind of isolating. So I do value a lot online, and I think Carl was really probably just complaining because he's effectively failed miserably online with establishing connections either through dating apps or whatever. And so he's really just come on to moan about that, and Matt didn't really waste too much time with him. He did mention a few things about Twitter, though. Actually, it was Mackenzie. Yeah. So Mackenzie, he's the one that lost his call early on because he had his feed on, and he eventually came back, and he wanted to talk about Twitter, how to know when we are harming someone with our comments on Twitter. So he was asking Matt, what does he think Elon Musk will do to? Does he think that it will become more regulatory and more, there'll be more moderators pulling content and banning people, or will it become a lot freer? And what, how will Elon Musk deal with that? From his moral viewpoint. And obviously, Matt's not a big fan of Elon Musk. He said, well, first of all, he doubts very much whether Elon Musk has got any kind of moral viewpoint, or he would have any means of establishing a moral framework. He called him, what was it? Well, he called him a spoiled billionaire. He just didn't like the way Twitter was being run, so he bought it so he could run it how he wants. And Matt said that if if Twitter becomes, what did he call it? Yeah, excuse the language. If it becomes a shit show for hate, Matt will leave, and he thinks that obviously the moderation which goes on Twitter is important, and that they don't want it to turn into a platform for bigots, which is fair enough. Obviously, I agree with that myself. I don't really use Twitter. It's not really something I've ever got into. I do have an account, but I don't really look at Twitter, to be honest with you. Um, oh yeah, he also said about Elon Musk that he's got it in for trans because his ex-wife apparently. This is gossipy, really, but shouldn't really be passing it on. But as Matt, I'm just doing a review here, so I've got to repeat what he said. So Elon Musk's ex-wife apparently left him for a trans woman. I didn't know that, and for that reason, Elon Musk is anti-trans. I don't know if there's any truth in that. I'm just reporting what Matt claimed. Um, yeah, so that's about it with that call, Mackenzie. And then what? Let's see. Um, we've got Tio. What did he talk about? Oh yeah, Tio, Croatia, calling from Croatia. This was an actual theist caller questioning his theism, but still clinging to supernatural beliefs. So he was saying to Matt, and obviously for me, this is quite a good call because it's the sort of calls that we normally see on the atheist experience. So these are the kind of calls that I actually like, even though they can be predictable. But in this case, he was saying that he's saying that he's saying sometimes he's convinced there's a God, other times he's not convinced, and he's not too sure what he is. And Matt said, well, in that case, at the times when you're convinced there's a God, you're a theist, and at the times when you're not convinced that there's a God, you're an atheist. And then Matt said, tell me, and the times when you're convinced that there is a God, what is it that convinces you? And so Tio said, well, he said he's personally had an experience himself. He also says that millions of people have had personal experiences which they've claimed prove there's a God, or they have some kind of supernatural experience. And I've heard this before, and you've heard this before. They can't all be wrong, or they can't all be lying. When you've got millions of people who've had these experiences, effectively there must be some real reality and substance to them. So Matt pointed out that out of all the millions of experiences people have claimed, how many of them have actually been confirmed that they were actual true supernatural experiences? And of course, the answer to that is none. So that so many people have had experiences just tells us that they've had experiences. It doesn't tell us anything about the true nature of the reality of those experiences. And so it came to Tio talking about his own experience, which he said was like time stopped. Matt came back in and he presented a very clear argument that time, it's impossible for time to stop. Time couldn't have stopped. The fact you're describing it and the way you've described it, means that time did not really stop. And he appreciates that he's exaggerating and that maybe it seemed to him like time had stopped, but in reality, time had not stopped. And then Tio argued that because his first language wasn't English, he couldn't really find the right words to describe it. And of course, typically when people try to describe their personal experiences, sort of, shall we say, spiritual or, as they claim, transcendental experiences, they quite often come to this, well, I haven't got the language to describe it. Even they're a native speaker, they still have not got the language to adequately describe. I've always said, and I've always kind of believed that if you can't find the words to describe something, then the reality is that there was really nothing much there to describe. I mean, if you had a feeling and you had some kind of experience, but you can't describe it and explain it, we've got a vast English language, and if you can't explain what your experience was, then it's indistinguishable from having no experience at all. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's how I kind of see things. And I think that's how Matt sees things as well, or those things as well, although he didn't specifically, he implied it. But, so, where are we? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, just briefly going back to Carl. I've made notes here, but I've gone across the page. Just coming back to something that he said when Matt says to him that, yeah, because he says, oh, I'm annoyed by, social media, etc. And Matt said, well, then we might as well hang up because I'm here to argue with you and talk about what you can demonstrate and present a coherent argument. If you're just saying you're annoyed and you want to express your annoyance, then we might as well hang up. And he said, well, it's not just that. I read this article in Psychology Today, and it was saying that young people are not getting the interactions they need, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because they're all online. And, Matt then just said, well, what you're doing there is just relating to me some vague claims made by a magazine that you can't even properly cite, and you're not going to. It just sounds to me like you're just annoyed by this whole thing, that you've been slighted online by people that don't find you attractive, and you've really just come on here to moan. Okay, so I've said enough about that. What else was there? And then right at the end, the last. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, Matt. There was another Matt that called. Matt called. Not too sure where he was from, but he was coming on to say that he's an atheist caller and he thinks there are positive things about religion. So, and he asked Matt whether he thought that there were positive things about religion, and Matt said, "Well, you can always find positive things about any kind of group that you're involved in. I mean, a feeling of being in a community being the obvious one, but that if you take those positives and you look at what is underpinning them, in other words, what is the core belief, if it's untrue, it may well be that the benefits you're getting, if they're based on something which is untrue, are not such huge benefits as you think they are." And it also, so the Matt that called in mentioned about Christians, Christopher Hitchens' point that show me any good deed done by a religious group that could not be done in a purely secular framework. So the point is that you can get all these positive things from a sense of community or whatever, any of that kind of feeling of being together with people without having the supernatural beliefs attached to it. So, well, I think that's about it, really. I'm sorry, nearly half an hour video. I know that only 10 or 15% of you will still be with me at this stage, but I thought it was quite a good show. It's certainly better than the Atheistic Experience, which I watched on Monday morning, and which I thought was an absolutely appalling show. Again, mostly atheist callers, and the theist calls that did come in were not good. So I didn't really enjoy the Atheist Experience. I was so desperate, I even went and looked at Talk Heathen, and that wasn't any better. So I thought it was quite a good show by Matt on the line today. I thought there were some good calls, and I look forward to his next show. So that's all for now, guys. Thanks for staying with me. Leave some comments if you want. I appreciate it. See you later.